The Rockpile Report, the pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bills season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And we are here talking about Week 10, the Buffalo Bills against the Indianapolis Colts. Our time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard, the place, Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. Weather, Chris, it's a fucking dome.
Correct.
The line, the Bills are 4.5-point favorites. Road favorites by almost a touch.
I don't know what the... I'd have to get the betting numbers on it, but with the amount of betting podcasts that I've listened to, typically that's like a dead man spot, and you should pay attention for the dog in that situation. But I think this year, a lot of times, that just means by the numbers, whoever is favored, it's really a touchdown. So expect Buffalo to win by a touchdown based on those 4.5 numbers throughout the season. That's what I've heard on a lot of podcasts. Also, this was we're going to go into the future. Here's the coverage map. Technically, that doesn't come out until Wednesday. I'll put it in post, but it's Andrew Catalon, Tiki Barber, and Jason McCourty. 3-man booth.
Wow.
Exactly.
3-man booth. That's always weird. Like, did you see everybody what were they talking about? Who was in the corner? Dean Blandino in the corner.
Oh, yeah.
That's Dean in the corner. That's Dean in the spotlight, losing his religion. It's just such a weird thing to have 3 dudes in such a tiny space, isn't it?
Yeah, they were at Lambeau, right?
Yeah, I believe they were at Lambeau.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Lambeau's booth to be that small where you just stuff Blandino in the corner.
Injuries to watch in this one. Just before we hit the air, there was some breaking news out of Indianapolis that I think is going to mean a lot to this matchup.
Ryan Kelly,
starting center and the most veteran member of the offensive line for the Colts right now, has been placed on injured reserve. Okay, so injured reserve for Ryan Kelly, which means Taylor Bertolone. I think he was a 4th-round pick. He started a couple games for them.
What's that guy's name again?
I have it here in front of me. Tanner Bertolini, out of Wisconsin. The Colts drafted him in the 4th round. He started 2 games in place of Kelly.
Don't they make pasta? Bertolini? That sounds like that sounds like a pasta brand.
What's interesting is when you look at the percentage of snaps this year, though, right? Like you have Quentin Nelson, you have Braden Smith, their offensive tackle, who I believe he's also a youngster. And then as you go down the line, Ryan Kelly, who's missed a couple games. Now, Tanner Bertolini has, 160 snaps in replacement for him. That's going to be a huge... Like, when you think about what the rushing attack means to this team, losing your starting center the week of, another game, that's big. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
Well, the only thing I do know is you're going to have to get to work with the center quarterback exchange. That's all I know. But then that never seems to be a problem, even when a center gets injured during a game. But that's but we're also going up against Joe Flacco, who's a pro's pro, and he might be. I think Joe Flacco might be in this league for another 8 years at this rate. He's 38 years old, I think. Mm-hmm. The man just can't fucking retire.
I wonder if he owes people money. I wonder if Joe Flacco has a secret gambling addiction we don't know anything about.
See, what I think of...
Maybe like Tom Brady, he just hates his wife.
What I think of in this situation is I mean, I'm sure it's been discussed on the show before, but you did have a bet about Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco with somebody. So whenever I'm at that point now where Matt Ryan's retired, and now whenever I hear Joe Flacco, and he's still kicking it, it reminds me of whatever bet you had with
case
some
of
friend.
beer. Case of beer to whoever had the better career. The problem is one of them still won't fucking end it, so I can collect my money because I never believed in Matt Ryan.
Well, if you had Joe Flacco, you should be winning.
Well, and the funny part is
he's got the Super Bowl, Matt Ryan doesn't.
We're actually going to talk about him in a minute. But otherwise, Bernard Raymond, one of their other offensive tackles, is also questionable. It's a lot, right? Like when you look at what's going on there and you look at just like it's Quentin Nelson now and who? Like who's their most tenured offensive lineman?
I have no idea. I'll pull up our lads.
Yeah. If you want to go ahead and take a look at that. No other injuries of note. When you talk about the Buffalo Bills have some issues. The Buffalo Bills have some injuries to watch ahead of this one. I just want to make sure that I have this trued up. I'm going to bangedupbills.com, as I do for all of my injury news. Reggie Gilliam, who we didn't miss last week in a game against Miami, questionable. Amari Cooper, questionable. Christian Benford, also questionable. Now, given that they sat out last week, I wonder how close they are to returning this week. If they don't, I don't know. I have to assume Kyer Elam's going to be limited. I mean, the guy literally separated his shoulder during the game and put it back in. I'm assuming the doctors are going to want to take a look at that.
Yes.
So all of their status is going to be worth watching. I think the biggest one is Keon Coleman. He went to go get an MRI, and we still haven't heard anything. There's been no leaks. There's no nothing. All I hear is optimism. Hey, we're holding out hope. Holding out hope for what, Sean? I'm hoping that they're just going to say that it's a bad sprain, but the mechanism of injury, a helmet slamming into it, hopefully this isn't like a Taron Johnson sort of injury where we end up losing you for 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, we can't have that.
Here's a question. If they do have to put Keon Coleman, like let's say he's going to miss based on the nature of his injury, you have 2 more games, then your bye week, then a game against
San Francisco.
But I don't think the bye week gets I don't think that's how, and Chris, maybe I'm being dumb. I don't know. Is it 4 games you have to miss or is it 4 weeks you have to be out?
Probably 4 weeks.
Give that a Google if you have a chance. Because here's what my fear is. You're going to come out of your bye with some real tests on the schedule. You're basically going to have San Francisco at home, then the Lions away, and Lions away, Rams away. That all of a sudden looks like a tough stretch of games. And so with that in mind, not having after 4 games. Okay. So if you put him on IR, you risk, you get the roster spot back. But what you risk is going into some really tough contests. You're talking Kansas City, San Francisco, and I believe Detroit. Either that or LA. I'm trying to think of the schedule in my head. You're going to go into those games without his services, and you already know it. And so does your opponent. Whereas if you do what we did with Taron Johnson and you just don't say anything, yes, you do lose the roster spot, but then you don't have to disclose the makeup of your offensive roster for that upcoming game. I think there's some merit to some of that. Also, I see Casey Toohill here on this report too. So these are all names to watch that I think are really going to have a potential impact on Sunday's game. When we talk about the game itself and trying to preview this thing and talk about who the Indianapolis Colts are, Chris, it has been one hell of a season in Indy because the only thing consistent is inconsistency. The only consistent thing happening inside that building that's worth any sort of value to anyone is their mascot bullying middle school children in pickup football games during halftime. Have you seen these compilations, Chris?
No, I haven't.
Go Google it. Blue versus kids. I think that might be all you have to put in. You could Google it right now. And what it will bring you is about 5.5 minutes of a bunch of mascots led by the Indianapolis Colts mascot Blue. There it is. Mascot goes crazy versus Pee Wee football team. And it's just grown adults in mascot costumes, just pummeling middle school kids. And when I say middle school kids, Chris, look at those children.
They look like they're baby Gronk.
What do you, those kids look like they're what? Probably about Benton's age, maybe 10, 11, maybe 12. Skip ahead. Yeah. Skip ahead. These kids get jacked up by these mascots. What do you think it is that drives an adult to want to do this?
They miss their calling. Simple as that.
Are these the gym class heroes?
Yeah.
Scroll ahead. Watch. Okay, so he comes out.
I'll have to find some plays.
Here we go. And he blows the party things out of his nose as he's leveling a 9-year-old. And it's going to be, it's usually egregious. Like it's a stiff arm. It's, and then Blue catches a touchdown. And then I bet you afterwards, he's either going to spike it at one of the children or he's going to talk trash.
Yeah.
And Chris, that air hump maneuver, yeah, he does that after he bullies a child to the ground. It's hilarious. The amount of trash talk that goes on there. What if you're a parent and you see your kid getting treated like that by a guy dressed in a blue fuzzy suit? What goes through your head?
I have no idea. This might be it. Yeah, he just shoves a child.
He just two-handed that kid up. Watch. He starts a fight. It's the whole team against him.
Yeah, if you wanted a movie reference for it, just think Will Ferrell in Kicking and Screaming, where he just shoves that kid to the ground.
It is entertaining, though, because I'm a bad person. Everything else that's taking place on that field in Lucas Oil Stadium is kind of a mess. And so much of it, I think, has to do with tactical decision-making or the lack thereof, and just roster utilization, which unfortunately doesn't often flip like a switch from one game to the next or with the return or the absence of one specific player. And so to start talking about them, I want to look at the offense. Because to me, this smells like a team that genuinely has an identity crisis, and that comes from some of the highest places within the organization.
For clarification from Kyle Trimble, he texted me. It's 4 games. The bye week doesn't count.
Yep.
So you're missing 5 games.
And that's my point. Like, you're technically missing the next 4 games in 5 weeks. So he would be out for a considerable number of meaningful matchups. Now that we're in this position as a football team, you look at that stretch and go, do I want to play the Rams? Do I want to, like, maybe he's even out, but do I want to play the Rams with them knowing I'm not going to have one of my biggest wide receivers?
Well, I believe the next 4 is
Indy,
KC, bye,
San Francisco.
Bye week, San Francisco, Detroit.
Yeah. I don't want to play any of those teams with them knowing full well that he's not coming back for that game and not having to spend time watching tape. So if you're talking about the Colts, think about what their identity has been for as long as we've known them to be recently successful. Let's go back to 2020 when the Bills met them in the wild card round.
Old quarterbacks?
You know what's fucking hilarious is now that you say it, holy shit.
Rivers, Matt Ryan, and Flacco.
Just let me get into this. I don't want to derail my point here. In 2020 with Rivers, they make the playoffs with Buffalo. Jonathan Taylor ends up being 4th in rushing and 6th in NFL Next Gen Stats rush yards over expectation, which is just a stat that measures explosiveness and how many plays after contact you can make, things of that nature. 2021, Jonathan Taylor goes on to lead the entire NFL in rushing yards and rush yards over expectation. Now, because their offense sucks that year and they can't throw the football, they go on to a 9-8 finish because they can't pass the football worth a damn. In 2022, in comes Matt Ryan, and they have a nightmare season that sees them go 4-12. First of all, it took me doing research for this podcast to remember that Matt Ryan played for their team.
4-12-1.
I feel like
they tied.
Was that just a field goal game that ended with it was 9-all in overtime? Please tell me it was, because I feel like I remember
Week 1, they tied 2020.
Okay, because I remember them being a part of an overtime. There it is. Denver Broncos. Click that. Box score. Thursday night. This was the game that almost killed Thursday night football. Scroll down. Here's your box score, Chris. A field goal. No, scroll up. A field goal in the first quarter. The teams trade field goals in both the second and third quarters. Indy kicks a field goal at the final gun and then again in overtime. Scroll down and look at these quarterback statistics next to each other.
Oh, the quarterback?
Yeah, go down to passing. 2 interceptions, 6 sacks, no touchdowns thrown for Matt Ryan. Russell Wilson, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 4 sacks. Neither quarterback had a higher than 60 rating. This game was a shit show. So 2022, on a team that needed to run the ball and find balance, couldn't, because I think that was the year they lost Jonathan Taylor, and everything fell apart for them. And that top 12 passing offense they had was just a lot of garbage time statistics. 2023, they hire this offensive-minded head coach in Shane Steichen. They go out and draft a hyper-athletic quarterback in hopes of reinvigorating this, because to Chris's point, how many old quarterbacks do we want to try to trot out here year after year after year? Let's go get this guy and fix our, he's going to add to the rush the way Josh Allen does. Oh, by the way, he's got a cannon for an arm, and we're going to build a vertical passing attack around him that doesn't make him think too much. He doesn't have to throw with anticipation because everybody knows he's a raw quarterback. Chris, I think I saw the stat. He only had 12 starts, collegiate, starts heading into the NFL.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you knew he was going to come in raw and that he was going to have a difficult time reading the complexity of NFL defenses. So what they did was they created this. What do we got there?
Well, he played in games, but he only started 12 of them.
Okay, so he was only a 12-game starter at the collegiate level, and then he gets brought into the NFL. So they construct this vertical passing attack that's supposed to play to his strengths while allowing him to use his legs, help augment the rushing attack. It's a lot of great things, right? It's a gamble because he doesn't have a lot of experience, but you're also, as an offense, not asking him to do things that require a ton of ability to read tight windows and zone, to kind of throw with anticipation to generate yards after the catch. That's not the offense you're trying to build. I will say that, then he gets hurt. Gardner Minshew was their quarterback last year for most of the year.
Yeah.
Coming into this year, I didn't understand the fantasy football love for this kid because he's, again, inexperience. And also, your roster construction doesn't smack of hey, we're going to get him guys who can yards after the catch and do things. Instead, what we have is Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, who is of unknown. I mean, he's been okay for stretches, but he's not taken a giant step forward in his career, and he's young. Another rookie in Josh Downs. And that's your offense. You have no real tight end depth or overwhelming talent to speak of. I mean, Mo Alie Cox isn't terrible, but he's not great.
Hey. Make sure you mention Adonai Mitchell. He's on my fantasy team.
Yeah, how's he doing for you? Because you took one of the rawer wide receivers in the NFL draft. So what you got were these guys who knew how to win down the field, paired him with a quarterback who doesn't see the field all that well and is still kind of understanding the feel that football takes, much less doing it at the NFL level. So I never understood the love affair with him in fantasy, and I'm not shocked things are going this way for him. You're in 2024 and the growth hasn't manifested. Flacco is now starting, and the result is you are a 4-win football team. You've gone right back to being the team that you've been for the last 4 years, which is old quarterback, really good running back, except you built the football team with a completely different player in mind. And when you look at where they stack up statistically, I mean, they're third in the NFL in run block win rate. So their offensive line is still doing the job of a good run blocking outfit. They're 29th in pass block win rate. Chris, doesn't that on its face, you're not a football genius. If you know that your offensive line isn't good at pass protecting, but they're really good at run blocking, how would you funnel your offense?
Well, this is the thing that I don't get. Drew, I grew up in a middle-class family.
I love when you start with this.
I'm just kidding.
I'm buckling in because I don't. I hate you so much.
Okay,
recording on election day is not the. This was not the move.
Here's the thing. If you have Flacco and Richardson, completely different skill sets. They're like you and me with this podcast. You can't tell me to go over there and do what you do, and you can't come over here and do what I do. It's just odd to me that, like, I understand the let's get Flacco in, veteran guy, you could show Richardson the way. But if you're building your offense around what Richardson can do, that doesn't mean Flacco is a quality backup based on what you're trying to do on offense.
No. And this is what's crazy about it. Like, let me set the table for you for this. Because, guys, I have a chart, believe it or not. The Colts right now ranked 21st in rush attempts. And they're 16th in rushing yards. That seems crazy if you're a team that knows it probably has to rely on an uber-talented running back. But you have an uber-talented running back. He's missed games, but you have one. Why aren't you funneling the ball to him and the rest of your stable of running backs that you could have and probably should have built better at this point? Like right now, Jonathan Taylor and James Cook statistically are almost the same player. That would be concerning. I mean, Jonathan Taylor has missed some time, so I'll take that with a grain of salt. But in terms of practical production, you're getting what you're getting out of Jonathan Taylor for James Cook, except he's getting paid a ton more money. And the thing is, the way you've built that thing, it should be working. But between play calling and game script, everything's blowing up in your face. In terms of game script, you're often falling behind for reasons we're going to outline in a minute. But in terms of play calling, you got to look at who they are. And here's like some critical flaws in the way that they've approached building this Colts team. Shane Steichen is a former offensive coordinator from the Philadelphia Eagles. Their offensive coordinator, Jim Bob Cooter, former offensive coordinator from Detroit. Both of them came from programs that at their most successful aired the ball out, like really threw the ball around. The Philly passing game. You know, obviously the running attack in Philly the year they went to the Super Bowl. It was underrated and the tush push got a lot of attention, but the reality was they threw the ball very efficiently. Those teams didn't have George fucking Blanda at quarterback. Like, they weren't rolling out an unseasoned rookie and an old veteran quarterback whose skill sets might be kind of aged a bit and make them the drivers of what's supposed to be a dynamic offensive attack. Because with an offensive line that between injury and talent can't prop them up from a pass protection perspective, those differentiations in skill set are going to get someone killed. When you look at this on its face, Pittman Jr., Pierce, and A.T. Mitchell, their average depth of target, 11.9, 22.3, and 15.9 respectively. There's no real layups built into this passing attack. It is significantly so a vertical passing game, or at least that's the way it's been orchestrated for most of the season, and that's the way you built it. That's the type of talent you surrounded this in. Now, some of that might be because Josh Downs missed time. He hasn't helped that dynamic. The fact that he's only started 3 games, Chris, and he's just 20 yards shy of being their leading receiver, that should concern everyone. Because it tells me you built a vertical passing attack without having a line you could really trust to orchestrate that, or having a quarterback who could pull it off. And your only pivot is to then take that running quarterback, vertical passing attack offense and turn it over to an older quarterback who may not have the physical tools it takes to do it. Chris, pull up the chart that I made for you. This is what happens when you make the decision that the Colts have made here. And when the announcement was made that they were benching Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco, this should have been expected. Guys, for those of you listening to the audio-only version, I'm looking at a chart right now that shows that Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson side by side, the number of passing attempts, there's only 2. They're almost dead even. Their completion percentage couldn't be more different. Anthony Richardson is 20% lower in terms of just raw completion percentage at 44.3. He's not a good passer. Now, Joe Flacco's a little bit better at 64, so I get on its face why if you're Shane Steichen and you feel like I got to be able to pass the ball, that's how we're gonna do this, Chris. It's not trust my star running back. It's let's lean into this and let the pass dictate how we orchestrate our offense. The problem is they're still building RPO. RPO and play action becomes so like that should be a giant part of your offense. Are no longer effective. If you look at this, Joe Flacco has run 28 RPO plays. 28 for the Indy Colts this year. He's got less than half the yardage Anthony Richardson does on those 28 plays when they do pass the ball. Also, he has 0 rushing attempts out of that formation. Do you want to know why, Chris? Because who's ever going to believe that Joe Flacco is holding the ball on an RPO?
No one.
That's like me. You want to talk about skill sets? That's me getting over there in the cockpit of this podcast and trying to run the ATEM live. How do you think that would go?
You wouldn't be able to do it.
Not only would I not be able to do it, it would go poorly. Maybe disastrously. And then you see the trickle over when it comes to play action passing. In terms of play action passing, they've got almost the same number of pass attempts, but with Joe Flacco on the field, the number of yardage, like the yards that they've generated, is less than half. So by going with what seems like on its face the more accurate quarterback, what you've actually done is you've neutered your offense. What that says to me, it's Chris, I mean, look at this. They lost to the Vikings on Sunday. Joe Flacco finished the week 13th in the NFL for first downs, 29th for touchdowns, because they lowered the average depth of target for the receivers and they made what should on its face be a more efficient offense. It's not, because it wasn't built to be this, and those players can't execute in those moments. So all the explosive plays just got sucked right out of their offensive approach. And then it increased the impact of every poor play that gets made. The poor throws, sacks, penalties. Like, our team is built to suppress teams that want to throw the ball down the field. Look at the Miami Dolphins and the struggles they had with us this year. Knowing full well that they have wide receivers on the roster whose entire game is predicated on them being able to get open at the second and third level of your defense. And we basically held them down and peed in their hair for 8 straight quarters. So with that in mind, I don't know how this quarterback change benefits them coming into this matchup with Buffalo. Do you?
No.
I just, in a vacuum, it seems like a smart concept, but clearly in execution and the numbers bear it out. And then the results, you're a 4-win football team. I mean, it's...
well, they specifically hired Shane Steichen to be the head coach with drafting AR-15 in mind, because he has similar skills to Jalen Hurts. And where's Philadelphia been since Steichen left? Nowhere. And they like what he did with Hurts. They're trying to recreate that with Richardson, except that from the jump, Richardson should have been riding pine on the bench and learning.
Yeah.
And they just forced him in there, and now they got to make a switch to save their ass with old Joe Flacco.
And now the problem is you've exacerbated those issues by losing your starting center. Like Tanner Bertolini, Bertoli, I don't know.
Tolbertone?
Toblerone?
That's a chocolate, right?
I think so. Toblerone. I feel like they used to give them away at Swiss Chalet.
Possibly. It sounds like a fancy chocolate.
I remember growing up thinking Swiss Chalet was fancy.
I don't even remember Swiss Chalet.
Give it a Google and see if it doesn't jog your memory. Swiss Chalet, I remember the one time I went there and got ribs, and they brought me out some lemon and a little thing of water to like dip my fingers in so I could wipe them off on my napkin. And I was like, what kind of fancy ass establishment did my parents take me to?
This does not ring a bell.
And then at one point they was like, oh, you could get whole chickens and we'll throw, and back in the 90s, they were like, and we'll throw in a free Blockbuster movie rental. And it's like, this family's getting high-end dinners, free chocolate, free fancy chocolates, and a free movie? These people must be loaded.
There you go, Toblerone. It's a Swiss chocolate.
So when you think about the Ryan Kelly injury, that's where this gets exacerbated, because now not only do you have a quarterback who you square peg round holed into an offense that you built to have a specific philosophy, you now have two rookie offensive linemen standing next to Quentin Williams?
Quentin Nelson.
Quentin Williams, it doesn't matter. They're both fat guys who play the inside of the line. They've been around for a while, and I expect the Bills to beat the hell out of both of them. Quentin Nelson, imagine what would have happened. Like the way the position this puts him in. Imagine if last year when Osiris Torrance was a rookie, what if he, instead of having McGovern on his left hip, had another rookie? It's not great, huh?
No.
And then you throw in a young tackle on the other side of that. Like all of this, like right now, Quentin Nelson at guard has become the linchpin of the entire line from an experience standpoint. I don't know that bodes well. I don't know. It's definitely not great. So I also think that part of what screwed them is they have all these offensive philosophical problems, right? Because eventually you can't just blame the talent. You have to blame the philosophy that's being incorporated with that talent. And that's where the Colts are right now. They're a team that had an idea and then tried to pivot. Like, Chris, you know what I'm picturing in my head is that scene in The Waterboy? When Henry Winkler is trying to draw up a play on the whiteboard and he goes, no, wait a minute. He goes, the quarterback fakes to the left. No, wait, he doesn't. He thinks about faking to the left. He fakes the fake to the left. Then he turns to his right. I don't know where I am. He goes, all I can see is white. I can't breathe. I need to sit down. I feel like that's what's happening to him in real life. He's coaching his way into a corner by recruiting the players that they recruited, building the roster the way that they did, and ingraining this philosophy that they had just to turn around and have to try to become a more conventional offense. And what also doesn't help them is that their defense in a lot of these games isn't strong enough to bail them out when things don't go well. When you look at the other side of the ball, the Colts defense isn't bad. Like generally, if you see a team that has 5 losses, you might go, well, they suck. They're terrible. I think they're more like Miami in the sense that they just haven't gotten the proper support from their offense to really make a difference. And the reason I think that is because their offense clearly just, if you, like when you look at it, you have Jonathan Taylor, you have Quentin Nelson. You should be running the ball using RPO and play action and then trying to make chunk plays down the field. I see what you did. I know why you're doing the things you're doing. But if you don't have a lead, opposing offenses can still stay balanced in their approach. You know, the Colts were basically going to come into this year banking on explosive plays to pace their offense. It's almost like the Bills in 2020. Think about what Josh Allen was doing at the time. A lot of our offense was 20-yard, 15-yard chunk plays down the field. But if you asked us to matriculate the type of offense the Bills are running right now, it would have been impossible. Josh couldn't have run it. It's putting a lot of pressure on the Colts defense. And when you leave opposing offenses room for flexibility and creativity because you're not putting scoreboard pressure on them, you expose some of the warts on the roster. I mean, if I have to give them their flowers, the good that comes out of their roster from the top down, their defensive line is pretty solid. Grover Stewart, right, made the only splash play for the Colts the entire night. Strip sack on Sam Darnold.
Oh, you mean the clothesline from hell?
Yeah. Bradshaw JBL would have been proud.
Mm-hmm.
You look at that play, the rest of them, they're pretty sound, right? In terms of pass rush, they don't have huge sack numbers. But Kwity Paye, who it's funny was drafted ahead of Greg Rousseau in his draft class, Grover Stewart, rookie Lealatu. They have a really good rotation. They believe in that, the same way the Buffalo Bills do. Try to keep them fresh, go 4 quarters. And they're not piling up sacks, but they're making disruptive plays. You know, they've got 12, I think each one of them has 12 quarterback hits or more. A lot of hurries involved, and they're consistent about generating pressure. The defense got a little bit better because DeForest Buckner finally came back. And what is he has? Two sacks in his last 2 games, increased pressure totals. That is one of the better pieces of their entire defense. The biggest problem they have is their linebacker and safety play, which sucks because it's the middle of their defense. Jalen Jones was a cornerback. Safety Nick Cross. Linebacker Zaire Franklin. Safety Julian Blackman. Linebacker EJ Speed. Cornerback Kenny Moore. That is the center of their nickel defense. When you go into 11 personnel, those are the players you're going to see on the football field. Of them, the only one that doesn't have double-digit missed tackle percentage on actual passing downs is Julian Blackman, the veteran. That's atrocious. On passing plays that specifically target the second level, double-digit missed tackle percentage for every single player involved except for one safety. It's probably not ideal, is it, Chris?
No.
The result is that these guys give up the 12th most yards per play in the NFL, the 10th most 20 or more passing plays, 20 more or plus yard passing plays. They give up explosive plays, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that they get targeted in the center of the field, guys miss a tackle, and it's like the Ray Davis thing, where that Ray Davis touchdown almost shouldn't have happened. You know, if Marcus May on the Dolphins makes the tackle instead of just a half-assed arm tackle on a guy with really good contact balance and low center of gravity, I don't think Ray Davis houses it.
That had to have been a broken play because I don't see, I don't, there isn't a world that I believe that wasn't broken on the Dolphins' end.
It wasn't.
The idea that Ray Davis gets 15 yards down the field before he encounters his first, I got to make this guy miss.
Well, it
was the only person.
Well, if you look at the flow of the defense before he throws the ball, there's a little misdirection involved. So it gives him a runway to get up to speed, but realistically, somebody at the second level should have tackled him. Nobody did. Why? Because of the thanks to the misdirection, there was nobody who could get an angle on him except for Marcus May. And he was already trying to shade to the sideline, so all he could do was crash inside and throw an arm. The reality is, this linebacking core in the center of the defense has proven really vulnerable in the passing game. And that's a nightmare scenario for a team that has to go play a Buffalo Bills offense that's been churning out the low average depth of target passes that the Bills have and been having the success after the catch that they've had with them. I mean, even with the return of DeForest Buckner, I don't know how you fix that. And then on the boundary, they just really lack the cornerback talent to play man coverage consistently. So it doesn't help support the pass rush. And so it makes it hard for you to ever really clamp down on them for an extended period of time, which is something we've used already this season to just abuse teams with over the course of 4 quarters. And then there's the ugly. And the ugly would be their third down defense. I think both of these dynamics play a role in that. They lead the NFL in third down conversions allowed per game. An average of 14 third down conversions per game. Not even just first downs, but legitimate. We got you to 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 7. And somehow everybody and their mother keeps converting these things. And it's these dynamics I just talked about. Lack of ability to support a pass rush. Inability to play man cover consistently on the outside. Soft up the middle of your defense. We've already proven that we're capable of chewing our way through a defense slowly, and I think that what we have the ability to do to that defense puts so much more pressure on them in this one to execute. I understand the line, Chris, right? You're on the road, playing a quarterback, you're expecting a bounce back performance because I think the betting community says, hey, Joe Flacco doesn't lose very much. The Bills' run defense is suspect. Chris, I think I'm ready with this week's keys to victory.
Wow, that's a lot of keys. Bigger the keychain, more powerful the man.
First of all, I think it goes without saying, we have to find a way to be sound against the run on first down. Now, they don't do a ton of it, but they do enough of it. And that's like good for them for realizing, and I'm sure they're going to do more of it given all of this. Because again, if me, one lone idiot with Google, can figure things out like, hey, their offense is horribly skewed and the performance metrics on their passing attack are gross, they should run the ball more. I'm sure someone on their staff is saying this right now. As we speak, they're talking about it in their office. There will be a commitment to the running game early. I think our front seven is going to have to be up to the task. And I think a lot of that, I fully expect to see more Eli Ankou. He played really well against Miami. And I think that the way Eli Ankou and, DaQuan Jones hasn't had a good year, and I don't know how much of that's, I keep seeing him on the injury report with a foot designation, but he's playing. I wonder how much, just like Curtis Samuel and his toe, how much that's really playing a role in his poor performance or mediocre performance. But those two guys are going to have to be able to win their matchups and clog up the center three on that offensive line. Because our edge players have proven really good against the run this year. And I think that they're going to have a hard time orchestrating a rushing attack if you can just hold serve in the middle of the line. Dorian Williams is susceptible to eye candy, so misdirection runs and things like that I expect him to fall prey to. But if you can protect them a little bit and clog up the center, Terrell Bernard and Dorian Williams should be adequate to at least limit the damage this rushing attack can do. Especially when you throw in the rushing efficiency of our defensive ends. On the other side of this, it really comes down to, I think this is another game where you almost have to replicate what you did against the Miami Dolphins. I don't expect them to come out of a too high safety shell, knowing that they're not good at man defense on the outside. I think the Bills offense is going to see a lot of too high safety looks. In that way, you have to stay the course. It's not sexy football. It's not splashy. If you're a quarterback who's used to kind of gunslinging, you probably hate this, right? Chris, I'm going to throw the ball around the line of scrimmage 15 times today and just trust my teammates can make the plays. I'm not going to be the one driving it into coverage or using my arm or the arm arrogance that we've accused Allen of in the past. I shouldn't even say accused because that makes it sound like a bad thing. But where he can show it off, I think you have to suck all of that out of this and just be methodical in playing small ball. And if you do that, you're going to put all the pressure in the world on their second-level defenders and their safeties. And I don't know that they have the horses to stop us from Khalil Shakir. This strikes me as a Khalil Shakir game, just in the sense that nobody there can tackle, and nobody's been able to tackle Khalil Shakir at first brush. Factor in his yards after contact with the fact that position group where he's going to be operating in the middle of the field is so bad at tackling in the first place, and just that speaks to bad angles being taken. I really think we have the weapons to take their existing issues and just exacerbate them. And then if you can put a little scoreboard pressure on this team, I don't see a world where Joe Flacco is the guy throwing them out of a hole in a shootout with Josh Allen. I mean, Chris, how do you feel about that?
Josh Allen's going to take these assholes to task in a dome.
In a dome.
Yeah, he's going to remind him of how far he can throw it in shorts.
And I guess my last key, Tyler Bass.
Bass needs to, he gets to kick indoors.
You're kicking indoors. Everybody's overflowing with goodwill for Tyler Bass. All right, sir. You have your moment of redemption. Now what you have to do is you have to come out here and you have to prove that it wasn't a fluke. And I hate saying it like that, but that's kind of how I see it. I think that you have to come out here in a dome in very controlled circumstances and show that you have the leg and the consistency to be the kicker we need you to be, that we're paying you to be, that you've had opportunities to be in the past, and just whether it's poor mechanics, whether it's the weather, whether it's mental, just a mental block. Show us that this giant kick of yours that everyone's giving you your flowers for, and rightfully so, that this is the cure for the yips that have, that we expanded on at the end of our recap show ad nauseum. Show that you turn the corner, that this really is a redemption arc for you. Like in your storyline, this is storybook. I hit this giant kick. It gave me my confidence. I got my groove back like Stella, and now I'm off to go marry some rich guy. And or kick field goals well. Or both. I mean, I don't care what he does in his free time.
See, what I'm looking for on Sunday from Bass, high pressure situation, 61-yard field goal. For this game, I would view his high pressure kick situation being, we're up 14 and we need you to go kick a 45-yard field goal to take us up 17, 3-score game and set it apart for the rest of the game. So that's what I want to see on Sunday.
So you're overthinking this. To me, it's, can you hit on the opening drive? Opening drive, something doesn't go right, guy drops it, we need to make a 51-yarder. I want to know I can trust you to hit that kick. Because it's a kick that's right on the fringe of where you should be able to make. Chase McLaughlin made those kicks for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football. Helped keep them in the game against Kansas City.
And the Colts in that 12-9 game against the Broncos.
Yep.
That we discussed earlier.
Chase McLaughlin, guys like that are out there
also
hitting these
did it
kicks.
for the Jets and the 49ers.
Yep.
Because I believe, and I think Minnesota too.
Yep.
He's played for 9 fucking teams.
These guys can make those kicks. I need you to make them, and I need you to make them for us. Otherwise, you'll be making them somewhere else. Go out there on the opening drive when we stall out and we need a 45-yarder. I need to know that you can hit that in a controlled environment with crowd noise. I don't want to hear about it. Make that kick. And if you can do that, and you can help us apply the scoreboard pressure, even if it's 3 points at a time that we need, I have no doubt in my mind we'll win this game. If you can't, now we have a whole other problem. And it also derails a lot of the, the vibes, as people call them.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, people might have to, I don't know, maybe give me my due. Just saying.
Like freezing cold takes.
Freezing cold takes. Guys, this is going to be a good one, and it should be one the Bills come out on top. They should continue.
I don't see a world in where we can lose this game unless Flacco is vintage Flacco and we cannot get A-gap pressure.
Fair. We're going to have to see. How do they fare against those rookie, the young interior offensive line is probably the other story of this game. Can Ed Oliver show us something? Because he's been a no-show for weeks. Can Ed Oliver show us that he's like, hey, you're earning your paycheck too, right?
Can't you put Ed Oliver directly over center and do that?
I mean, we could.
I mean, you can't do that on field goals.
No, but you
punts.
could in theory, but you don't want to because that makes it easier for the center to just grab a piece of him. You don't want to do that.
But I thought we went over this center's new.
Yeah, but being new, it doesn't matter.
Can't Ed Oliver just push him over?
If you and me heads up, right? Like you're lighter than me.
Yeah, you're going to throw me to the ground because even though it looks on camera right now that your arms are in your lap, your knuckles are actually on the ground. So it's one of those things where
reach and just
if you're playing tackle and I get to play edge, you just have reach on me. You can just stick me in my shoulder, and I can't grab your torso and toss you.
You want to limit your as an offensive lineman, you want to limit the amount of time. Like you want to take the angle and make him have to try to grab you awkwardly. You don't ever want to heads up against him unless you're a nose tackle and your job isn't to win with like, hey, I'm going to win with finesse. Instead, you're just going to grab him and bully him into the backfield with raw physical power.
Yeah, we don't have a Mike Lodish.
Or a Casey Hampton. Remember him for the Steelers?
Well, I was just going along the lines of former Bills players.
Yeah.
Mike Lodish. Who gave a JCPenney jacket to my brother in 93.
What a random thing. No, those,
Hey, it was supposed to be Andre Reed, but he backed out. So they brought us the next best player to Boston Valley Elementary, Mike Lodish.
what a time to be alive. Guys, I expect them to win this one. I'll be shocked if they don't, but hey, the keys are there. You understand who they are. We understand their warts. Now the Bills hopefully are doing their homework too, and they go out there and take advantage of this because we need every win we can get because a storm's coming. This upcoming slate of games, you got to pad this thing and pray to God that nobody around you gets hot. Guys, it's been a lot of fun, but for tonight we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. This has been your Week 10 preview.